At Bird Construction, we are committed to the personal ownership of safety.
Bird creates safe and healthy work environments because we care deeply about our people.
To uphold that value, we remain focused on all facets of well-being and personal responsibility through education.
This video will orient you to the key components of our Health and Safety and Environmental Program, also known as our HSE program, and its policies and the expectations and requirements of anyone working on one of our projects.
If you are not clear on any component of the Bird HSE program or your requirements while on site, or you would like more information, speak to your supervisor or consult the Bird HSE manual located in the site trailer.
Founded by H.J. Bird in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan in 1920, Bird has grown into one of Canada's largest general contractors and is executing interesting and complex projects for building, industrial, and institutional clients from coast to coast.
On all our projects, however, no matter how large or small, we share a common commitment to working safely.
Bird is one of Canada's oldest and safest general contractors. But we didn't get that way by accident. At Bird, we believe in the personal ownership of safety. We rely on good systems to ensure our work is done safely. But the work and conditions can change quickly. A construction site is a busy and constantly changing environment. There are numerous risks and challenges for me and my coworkers.
Me, I need to constantly monitor those conditions and adapt so I can keep working safely.
Errors and mistakes will happen, and if they do occur, I have to have a plan B to protect myself and my team.
That's why identifying and controlling hazards and unsafe work conditions is so critical. It's something we expect from everybody on our job site.
Safety is everybody's responsibility. It's a responsibility that I take personal ownership of.
Personally, I ask questions. And when I have difficult decisions, I slow down. I don't want to miss anything important.
By following our safety program and policies, I'm helping ensure a safe environment. I'm also helping everyone get home at the end of the day just as healthy and safe as when they first arrived.
Your work environment should be free from harassment, discrimination, and violence. You should never have cause to believe you are at risk of violence from another coworker.
Respect the diversity brought to the workplace by other employees. If you witness inappropriate behavior, disparaging comments, or offensive conduct, challenge it. Refuse to participate and report it to a supervisor or manager. Violence, including threats of violence, will not be tolerated under any circumstances and will be cause for immediate dismissal. Note that you may be subject to disciplinary action if you become aware of a potential or actual incident or workplace violence, but fail to report it or take immediate corrective action.
Harassment is any unwelcome physical, visual, or verbal conduct and will not be tolerated. Under no circumstances will a legitimate complaint of harassment be dismissed, downplayed, or the complainant told to deal with it personally. If you experience harassment, advise the individual that their behavior is unwelcome and ask them to stop. Keep a record of the incidents. Report the problem to whoever you feel most comfortable talking to, a manager, supervisor, Joint Health and Safety Committee representative, or HSE coordinator.
Bird has created work standards in the form of safety policies. It is your responsibility to familiarize yourself with all policies.
Where Bird policies differ from that of our trade partners or clients, you must always work in accordance with the higher safety standard.
All new workers to the site must receive a site-specific safety orientation prior to commencing work. Also, prior to commencing work activities, trade partners are responsible for having provided proof of appropriate training for all their workers for mandatory and task-specific work they will be performing on site. For example, fall protection,
Confined space entry,
safe trenching and excavation or ground disturbance,
scaffold erection,
elevated or aerial work platform operation.
material lift truck or forklift operation.
If proof of training has not been provided, you will not be allowed to commence these work activities. Before beginning any work activity on site each day, you are required to complete a field-level hazard assessment identifying your tasks for the day, the actual and potential hazards associated with that work, and plans to eliminate or control the risk.
FLHAs are completed individually or as a crew if the crew is performing similar work in the same work area. If completing an FLHA as a crew, each member of the crew must participate in the observation, identification, and documentation process, and must sign the FLHA.
Once completed, the FLHA must be reviewed and signed by a supervisor. This may be a superintendent, foreman, lead hand, or safety personnel.
The supervisor will review the risks as well as the proposed controls and discuss them with you or your crew as necessary, identifying additional risks or controls as appropriate.
As conditions change, the FLHA must be updated to reflect the conditions and controls, and these also have to be reviewed and signed by a supervisor, and of course shared with your team members. Be constantly vigilant, observing and communicating.
On all bird sites, the following PPE is mandatory:
CSA-approved safety glasses with side shields,
CSA-approved hard hats,
CSA-approved footwear.
CSA-approved high-visibility apparel.
Additionally, all bird employees and trade partners are required to wear proper hand protection at all times.
Hearing protection must be worn by all workers when exposed to noise levels in excess of the specifications in your local legislation.
Where respiratory protection is required, it must be properly fitted and the worker trained in its proper use.
Workers are responsible for ensuring their PPE is in good condition. If not, report it to your immediate supervisor.
The supervisor must ensure that defective, damaged, or worn equipment is repaired or replaced.
Be sure to follow current provincial or federal health regulations that apply in your project area.
Safe work practices provide general information and direction on how to safely perform a task, use a tool or piece of equipment, address a worksite condition. Bird has developed safe work practices, and all Bird employees and trade partners are expected to execute work in accordance with these safe work practices where applicable.
A safe work procedure is a written step-by-step description of how to do a job from start to finish. For any work that involves significant potential risk or where provincial regulations require specific written procedures for a task, safe work procedures must be developed and reviewed with your supervisor prior to the work commencing.
Follow safe work practices at all times. Only operate equipment and tools you are trained and authorized to use. Tag out and remove from service any tools or equipment that is defective, damaged, worn, or missing guards or protective devices furnished by the manufacturer, and report it immediately to your supervisor, foreman, or superintendent.
Do not use any tool for any purpose other than that intended by the manufacturer.
Immediately report all unsafe conditions, acts, and all near misses to your supervisor.
Remember, we're not here to blame workers. Blame fixes nothing. We want to fix conditions and implement controls that create solutions. Focus on what happened rather than who made a mistake.
Lifting and hoisting operations are one of the leading causes of serious incidents and fatalities on construction projects. Restricted access areas, commonly known as flagged-off areas, must be clearly marked and cordoned off and have proper signs posted. Failure to respect restricted access areas is a serious safety violation and subject to strict disciplinary action.
Mobile equipment often limits operator visibility and hearing. Workers should always exercise caution around mobile equipment and be conscious of the swing radius of lifting equipment, excavators, and other heavy equipment. When approaching mobile equipment, always make eye contact with the spotter or operator and do not pass until signaled to do so.
There are 4 areas of construction activity where there is an elevated potential for serious injury or death resulting from unsafe work practices: fall protection, energy isolation, excavation and trenching, confined space.
All people make mistakes, but there is no tolerance for error with these higher risk activities. Performing them safely is an absolute minimum.
Falls from openings or from heights, even heights less than provincially legislated fall protection requirements, can result in serious injury or death.
BIRD requires fall protection measures for any work conducted at heights of 6 feet or more. If there is a risk of falling, a proper fall protection plan must be created and implemented that complies with all regulations and safe work practices. Guardrails, fall restraint, and fall arrest systems are all components of a comprehensive fall protection program.
You must be authorized and trained to perform work of an electrical nature. Always follow appropriate procedures to positively identify and isolate all energy sources, and appropriately mark and tag all locking devices. Before commencing work with or near electricity, consult the appropriate safe work practice and procedure.
Never enter an excavation or trench unless you are authorized to do so. Ensure that an excavation permit is completed and reviewed to meet local occupational health and safety regulations. It is expected that a hazard assessment will be developed with reference to the permit before any task takes place.
Confined spaces are enclosed or partially enclosed spaces having restricted access to traffic, which may be or become hazardous to workers due to their design, construction, location, atmosphere, materials and substances in it, or other conditions.
Never enter a confined space unless you have received confined space training that meets your local legislative requirements.
Prior to entering a confined space, a completed and signed confined space permit must be in place and be reviewed by all workers working in or entering the confined space. Poor housekeeping creates unnecessary hazards and is a leading cause of slips, trips, and falls on construction projects. Don't walk by. Housekeeping is everyone's responsibility. If you see a housekeeping hazard, address it.
Keep your work area clean and tidy at all times. Ensure walkways and all exits are kept clear of all material, equipment, or debris and are well lit and properly ventilated. Keep areas in the proximity of emergency equipment such as fire extinguishers, hoses, and emergency PPE clear at all times. Remove nails or sharp objects protruding from lumber or bend them over. Properly cap all rebar or other protruding material.
Eliminate or control slippery conditions. Properly contain, label, and store all hazardous materials. Separate all other materials by size, type, and length, and place them in neat piles. Take personal accountability. Clean up as you go. Don't allow waste or debris to accumulate, and don't leave it for someone else to clean up.
Regular safety meetings provide an excellent opportunity for workers and supervisors to discuss all safety issues in an open and safe environment without fear of reprisal.
These include, but are not limited to, daily tailgate meetings, weekly toolbox meetings for all BIRD and trade partner crews, regular joint health and safety committee meetings, and safety stand-downs, to be held at the discretion of site management.
Bird Construction is committed to following sound environmental management practices so that the environment is not negatively affected.
All Bird construction projects are required to develop and have in place an environmental emergency response plan prior to the commencement of construction activities.
In the event of a containment release, notify your supervisor immediately.
Every worker is required by law to hold a valid certificate of Workplace Hazardous Material Information System, or WHMIS training. If you do not have a valid WHMIS training certificate, you must arrange for this training with your supervisor prior to commencing work on site. It is recommended that workers work with a partner. If work doesn't require a partner, then regular communication should take place between a worker and supervisors. A working alone procedure should be developed and signed by the person working alone and their supervisor when required.
At Bird, there are numerous situations where working alone is not permitted under any circumstances, and the Bird Working Alone policy and the Bird Safe Work Practice for working alone must be consulted prior to developing a working alone procedure. In most cases, Bird enforces discipline in a 4-stage process: verbal warning, written warning, suspension, and dismissal. Discipline is a key part of the education and care of our people. It also offers protection from those whose unsafe actions endanger their co-workers. For more information on discipline procedures, please consult the HSE manual. Learning and improving is always our first order of business. Bird will always seek first to understand what occurred, under what circumstances, and importantly, what within our systems failed.
All project teams must develop and implement an emergency response plan for their assigned projects. Details that will be included in the project-specific area of the emergency response plan include site-specific hazards, first aid stations and attendants, emergency alarms or air horns, and muster points.
All these details will be covered and reviewed in the site-specific portion of your orientation following this video. A listing of emergency phone numbers and contact information will be posted on-site in marked locations by the site trailers and telephones. Be sure to familiarize yourself with the locations of all first aid stations, site emergency procedures, and muster points.
The following are project safety rules you and your coworkers are expected to follow at all times. All workers are expected to arrive to work fit for duty.
Obey all posted signs. Smoking is permitted only in designated areas.
Your full cooperation in all inspections and audits is required.
Bird Construction requires all employees and trade partners to immediately report all injuries and illnesses, environmental incidents and spills, property, equipment, or motor vehicle damage, near misses, safety hazards, and unsafe conditions.
If injured on the job, seek appropriate first aid immediately to be appropriately assessed and treated. Even minor scratches, if left uncovered, can become infected and lead to more serious problems.
Bird Construction is committed to a culture of personal ownership on our projects and work locations. This requires partnership and commitment on all our part, working safely and working together every moment of every day.
If you are not clear on any component of the Bird HSE program or your requirements while on project, or you would like more information, speak to your supervisor or consult the Bird HSE program located in the site office.
Remember, safety is in your hands. So ask questions, participate, follow procedures, use safeguards, and watch out for hazards. You and everyone else on site is a safety leader, so what you do really matters.
Stay safe out there.